are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Joined with me, as always, is Zeeshan.
Yo.
Alright, man, as promised, because the NBA season is very soon upon us. Like, we're talking, 2 weeks? I think,
It's
until preseason?
less than 2 weeks until training camp.
Well, training camps are now. We're starting, training camps right
Oh, yeah, that's true.
this week.
Yeah. So less than 2 weeks until technically preseason starts.
Preseason. So, yeah, the season is coming very quickly. So, which means it's time to do our annual tradition at this point.
Yeah, it's annual tradition. It's a fun one.
It's a fun one for us. It's basically where we predict the standings for each conference. Now, the reason why it's fun for us is because we have absolutely no idea how this is going to play out. You know, we are going based off of how the team performed last year, the signings, the acquisitions they made, and our overall expectations on what we think is going to happen this upcoming NBA season. But like any prediction, it's a prediction, so there's a high chance that we could be wrong.
Yeah, we do this pretty much since we started this, we've done it annually, kind of. And I think the main reason why this particular segment is fun is because we get to look back on it after the season's done and see how weird the predictions were or how wrong we were. And again, we are pretty big NBA fans. I think we are, in terms of basketball knowledge, we know our stuff. Not to be cocky or anything, but we know our stuff, definitely. Problem is, you cannot predict anything. Predicting things is so hard to do right. Take last season, for example. Did anybody predict OKC would be a 4th, 5th seed?
Did anyone predict we'd have a bubble and, have a play-in tournament for a for an 8th seed?
Exactly.
No. So, I mean, the point is that there's a lot that can go right or wrong in an NBA season. That's what's great about it, But we still love to give our predictions just to, at least get our perspective and our understanding on how we think the season is going to go from our point of view. So with that being said, let's jump right into our predictions. We're going to start off with the Western Conference predictions in this episode. The Eastern Conference will be in the next episode. I believe last year we started with the East, but we're going to switch it up and start with the West. And the West is always the more interesting conference just because of how much talent there is in the West. It's usually the more competitive. It's usually a lot harder for us to accurately predict the standings,
Again, though, in the past 2 seasons, the East has gone a lot more competitive as well. So it's kind of gone hard. The NBA as a whole has balanced out a lot, and that's due to the influx of talent that's come into the NBA, where the talent level of the NBA now is so high. It's insane.
I mean, again, it's so hard now to make these predictions, especially in the Western Conference. But let's jump right into our predictions, starting off with the number 1 seed. I think our prediction for this year, we think the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. They were the first seed last year with a record of 52-19. Obviously, in a condensed schedule, the records are going to be different. So we're not going to give you guys the records because we don't know what they're going to be based on.
Exactly. And first of all, it's going to be a 72-game schedule. Second of all, I hope not, but it's highly likely based on how everything is going that there's going to be a couple canceled games. There's going to be some delays. There's going to be some moves around. The season's going to be very
weird.
Test and, trial and error.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, I don't think there's even any point in giving our predictions of the records because I don't think the records are going to, be set.
Yeah. Ultimately, the seeding is the main thing that most fans care about. So at the end of the day, we predict the Lakers are going to be the number 1 seed. Obviously, they're the defending champs, winning the championship last season, and they actually got better. If you watched last episode, if you haven't, definitely check it out. But basically, we basically crowned the Lakers as a winner of the offseason. They got added depth at basically every single position on the roster. With the acquisition of Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, Marc Gasol, Wesley Matthews. they got better at basically every single position while still bringing back their key pieces. They brought back KCP. I mean, they locked up. They're gonna be locking up AD very soon. You know, so the fact that they got even better, and you have LeBron James in another year with this Lakers system. Naturally, I just think they're gonna be the most consistent team, and overall, man, like I don't see anyone else in the Western Conference beating them.
Here's the thing about the Lakers, right? Naturally, you say LeBron's going at age 36. Anthony Davis, again, hopefully not, knock on wood, but he does have injury history where he does sit out games. They did get younger, but again, this is still a veteran team, right? Compared to at least the younger teams in the league. So that's a one potential, weakness or, monkey wrench in our prediction, where it's just like LeBron load manages, AD sits out a bunch of games. They don't care enough about the regular season to actually gun for that first seed. But again, as you were pointing to, that's where the bench depth comes in and the added support comes in. Guys like Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell. On the nights that LeBron and AD rest, these guys can try and go out for 30 points each.
Exactly, and it's still like the amount of talent that they added in, especially because now they're young talent. Like you can expect a lot more. Like you can expect a 30-point game from Dennis Schroeder. You can expect a 20-point outing from Montrez. Wesley Matthews can get hot on a few games. So that depth is definitely going to play a major factor into allowing LeBron to rest. And we said it in last episode. They're right now the favorites for us to repeat as champions.
For sure.
So no surprise that they're going to be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, going on to the number 2 seed, we're predicting the Denver Nuggets. Now, last year they were very close to that. They were 46 and 27.
Weren't they basically the 2nd seed until the Clippers actually started giving a shit?
And also until Denver lost like pretty much every game in the bubble, right before the playoffs, and like where they were playing terribly. But yeah, they had a 46 and 27 record last year. They were the 3rd seed. This year, it can be argued they got even better. Again, Jeremy Grant, I think, was a big loss.
Yeah.
But they were able to at least make up for it in a certain aspect by adding JaMychal Green, who, again, is not as talented as Jeremy Grant, for sure. But he does his job very well. And he did it very well for the Clippers last year. But then also, on top of that, you still have all your young guys. Bol, Michael Porter Jr., they drafted Zeke Naji. They pretty much drafted RJ Hampton. They got him in a draft day trade. They still have PJ Dozier, Monte Morris. And then, of course, we saw in the playoffs, Jamal Murray hit another level. This guy went absolutely crazy. He added 15 pounds, and that made like a world of difference for him. He officially launched himself into the possible all-star category of guards. So if he can continue that this season, which I see no reason as to why he can't, they're going to be even better this season.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that they still retain guys like Paul Millsap. They added I swear they added somebody else, but it is what it is. And of course they still have Nikola Jokic leading the team, who's still the best center in the NBA, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I think our toss-up was between either Denver or the Clippers as the number 2 seed. I think what nudged us over into Denver's direction was just the consistency, the fact that these players are going to get even better, another year of development into the system.
The experience they got last year from the playoffs.
Exactly. I was just about to touch on that. Like making it to the conference finals last year, even though they lost, the fact that didn't they come back? They went to what? They came back
3-1.
Yeah, 3-1 twice.
Yeah.
Before being in the conference finals with the Lakers.
They gave the Lakers a good fight.
They did.
And I think one other aspect before we move on that we could talk about the Denver Nuggets is if they pull off a trade in the middle of the season, which they very well could do considering the amount of assets they have. Obviously, Gary Harris, who we've talked about before, him being a possible trade candidate. Also, Will Barton is probably a trade candidate as well. And then, Torrey Craig, I think, left. Yeah, Torrey Craig is in...
I believe he still has a cap hold, so I don't.
No. He's in. He signed with. I forget what he signed with, but yeah, Torrey Craig is gone. But they do have a couple of pieces. Again, if they really want to go the route of trading a guy like Bol, maybe they can get some win now assets for him. So they have a bit of maneuverability as well to try and get better and get some win now assets. maybe if they feel Michael Porter Jr. just might not be able to cut it, health-wise, they can try trading him and getting some win-now assets, or even a guy like Paul Millsap, who they can try to get someone younger for him, right? So the Denver Nuggets have a great team as it is, but they also have a couple of moves they can make to get even better if they wanted to.
Yeah, they definitely have options. Which brings us into the third seed. Now, like I mentioned, I did mention that our toss-up for the second seed was between the Clippers and the Nuggets. Since we put the Nuggets at the second seed, our prediction for the third seed is going to be the Los Angeles Clippers. Last season, they finished with a 49-23 record that gave them second in the Western Conference. Despite the playoff flame out that is now infamous, with Way Off P and the boys over there, this is still a good team. They did lose, Montrezl Harrell and a couple of key free agents, but they still have Kawhi and Paul George. And when these guys play to their capabilities, they are a very dangerous duo. And then not to mention, they did sign Serge Ibaka, who, does improve them on their big man depth. If this team plays to their potential, if they can fix the chemistry issues that plagued them last season, they can be a lethal two-way team, as we all anticipated them to be. But the whole question is if, can they make it work with now new coach Tyronn Lue? That's still the biggest question mark with the Clippers, which is why we couldn't put them at the number 1 and number 2 seed, because we just don't know what to expect. Also, one point that I need to mention is that they're still thin at point guard. We did mention it, in the last episode when we thought the Clippers were a loser of the offseason. They didn't really address their major need of acquiring a point guard. Zeeshan and I were actually talking during the notes. They could potentially go after a player like Ricky Rubio, who could be a decent fit for them, if they can make, some type of trade with whatever assets they can find.
Which they don't really have.
Exactly.
Again, that's where the one probable asset they have is, or actually two, I would say. Lou Kennard's contract, Lou Williams' contract.
Yeah.
Right? They signed Ivica Zubac to an extension, if I'm not mistaken, last year, or was it this year? Whatever it was, right? And also Serge Ibaka's contract, technically, if you want to be real about it. Listen, the Clippers, again, they were memed like crazy, which they deserved. But again, as you were talking about, they have Kawhi and PG, right? Two of the best two-way players in the NBA. Not to mention, you also have Patrick Beverley, who is one of the best defenders at his position. And then you also have two of the, better centers in the league. Two of the, one of the better center rotations in the league with Ivica Zubac and Serge Ibaka. So despite the fact that they might have gone marginally worse or a bit worse on paper, low-key, I was telling Hani before too, they might be even better than last year because of the fact that they have another year of playing together. Right?
That's definitely true. Again, but the whole point of the Clippers is that we need to see the improvement. Like, we got to see the consistency from them, which is something that burned them last season. The fact that they couldn't get the chemistry going, the fact that, apparently Paul George was talking about how, they weren't making adjustments in the playoffs. Little things like that.
Nobody was surprised about that.
Well, little things like that is exactly why you flamed out in the playoffs, and it's exactly why we can't put them any higher than the third seed.
Again, at the end of the day, for the Clippers, they don't care about this, right? They don't care at all. It's
true.
all about the playoffs. It's all about winning a championship.
Pretty much.
You're right. That moves on to the fourth seed, and this is where I think it got a bit more trickier because of the fact that now you see the depth that the Western Conference has. And for our fourth seed, we're putting the Portland Trailblazers. Now, we talked about this last episode as well, where we said that Portland was one of the most improved teams in the offseason, quietly improving their team a lot, right? Adding guys like...
with limited flexibility, too, might I add.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't really have a ton to work with.
Adding Robert Covington, bringing back Rodney Hood, adding Derrick Jones Jr., adding Enes Kanter, right? Bringing back Carmelo Anthony, adding Harry Giles to that team that is already very capable of winning games. Again, last year, as we talked about in the previous episode, the reason why they almost missed the playoffs was not because their team was bad. It was because of the fact that mainly their injuries killed them, right?
Yeah.
Now that you have a team that's capable of getting back to that top 3, top 4 seed that they were, at 2 years ago, it's arguably even a better team than that team, I would say.
No, I definitely agree. And spoiler alert, there's always one team that I pick that I'm gonna pay a lot of attention to during the season. Mostly like a sleeper pick. Besides like my teams that I follow, I think Portland's gonna be that team for me this year. I really like. I'm a big Damian Lillard guy. I loved what he did last season. I think just the heroics and just the willpower that he had to bring his team into the playoffs, I think was inspiring and actually shows what a great player he is. But at the same time, I mentioned it last episode. I really liked what Portland did. They brought in the guys who I think they needed. They brought in wing depth that they desperately needed after Mo Harkless and Al-Farouq Aminu and Seth Curry all left. The previous season they brought like Robert Covington. They brought in Derrick Jones Jr. Re-signed Carmelo Anthony. Like now you can just see this is a more balanced team, and I think with Damian Lillard and CJ, if these guys can stay healthy, this is a very good ball club now.
They got better on both sides of the ball. Exactly. You still have on offense, you still have your main two guards, and Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum running the offense.
Well, but now you better.
Exactly. But you still have pieces to surround them. You saw how much better their offense got with Yusuf Nurkic and his passing ability, his finishing ability, right?
Right, and he even came off of an injury, so he'll probably be even better than last year as well.
You have Rodney Hood coming off an injury who, again, we'll see what he can do, but still, having Rodney Hood in the lineup definitely boosts your offense. Then you have Robert Covington's, shooting ability. Add that along with all the other pieces they have. They're a very, very good team. They got a lot better on defense, primarily because of adding guys like Robert Covington and Derrick Jones Jr. Obviously, the Enes Kanter signing didn't help at all in defense, but offensively, Enes Kanter is a great center as well.
Bro, did you see Enes Kanter's video? Like, he put a whole coming home video about coming back to Portland.
Yeah, bro. Listen, like, they got to the third seed 2 years ago, and again, as I talked about, I think this is a better team than they had 2 years ago.
Definitely. So, Portland definitely is in our opinions, we think they're going to do pretty well this upcoming season. Which brings us into the 5th seed. Now, the 5th seed, we're predicting that it's going to be the Utah Jazz ending up with this seed. Last season, they finished with a record of 44-28, which was good enough to beat the 6th seed. And Utah, we talked about them, like, they're definitely a weird team. Like, they always have, like, a great start to the regular season, and then they just, completely fall apart near the end.
Or it's the other way
around. So
primarily due to scheduling, which should probably be smoothed over a bit because of all the scheduling conflicts this year, obviously.
Yeah, but basically Utah brought back the exact same roster as last season. They brought back Derek Favors, which should help them defensively. Jordan Clarkson, they also re-signed, which is also which proved to be a good piece for them last season. Obviously Donovan Mitchell, after absolutely going to the next level in the playoffs last season, should be even better, with the new contract extension and all that. And Utah is just that solid team, overall. Like I hope they can get themselves to the next round, but due to the competitiveness in the Western Conference, it's so tough. But it's such a good team though. Like if Mike Conley can get it going, if Donovan Mitchell continues his growth, then you also have a Bogdanovich coming off of his injury as well. Pair that with Joe Ingles, and if Gobert has another great season, this is still a good team. Like, this is still a good team on both sides of the ball. It's just about them keeping that consistency and bringing that same energy into the playoffs is what they need.
Yeah, speaking of Mike Conley too, like he was brought in last year to be their answer for them at the point guard position. Now he had a terrible year last year, but when he came back in the bubble, he showed some real promise of being able to finally get that team to the next level. It's no coincidence why they played some great basketball in the first round of the playoffs. Obviously, they blew a 3-1 lead, which was not ideal, right? But it's not coincidence that they played some of their best basketball of the season without Bojan Bogdanovic in the bubble. Primarily, well, first of all, Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. Rudy Gobert actually also looked a lot better than he looked at the end of the season. And then Mike Conley himself looked a lot more like the old Mike Conley than what he was, this past season. So when you're adding up talking about the totality of this team and what they can do on both sides of the ball, again, as you were talking about, they're a very solid team, a very good team. It's just they're in the Western Conference, right?
Yeah.
It's a competitive league.
Yeah.
That brings us to our 6th seed. And this might surprise some people, or this could not surprise some people. But for our 6th seed, we have the Golden State Warriors. Now, obviously, last year they had a 15-50 record, which was last in the Western Conference. But here's the thing about Golden State. Number one, obviously, I guess we can talk about it right now. Klay Thompson unfortunately got injured. Which that's brutal, man.
Yeah, dude,
it's a brutal injury. Bro.
He got the DeMarcus Cousins, which nobody wants that, man. You get the ACL, and then right afterwards you get the Achilles.
That was a brutal injury just because of how much optimism that Golden State had this season, how much optimism Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steph Curry had after pretty much being on the shelf the whole last season.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a brutal. You can't help but feel bad for Klay Thompson, man. Like that, to have to go through an ACL injury in the finals, then, miss the whole season and then anticipate coming back this season and having a healthy squad for the first time in over a year, and then having this happen, it's a brutal injury, man.
Yeah,
it kills, bro.
We wish Klay a speedy recovery. We hope he's gonna be better than ever when he gets back. But that's tough, man. It's tough.
Achilles, bro. Achilles. Like that's why it's brutal, man. ACL. If it was an ACL, hopefully it wouldn't be as bad. But bro, Achilles are nothing to play with, bro.
No, not at all.
But moving on, going back to our main point about Golden State Warriors, having them as our 6th seed. Here's the thing about Golden State, which you have to understand, and I think people who watch basketball more will understand this. Golden State, this team, this organization, they're winners, right? We see this in Toronto as well, the Toronto Raptors. We saw them do this past season, right? Despite expectations, some people not even having them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Toronto Raptors finished with the top 3 record in the NBA. Golden State is, has been the best team in the league for the past decade, right? Or past half decade. And primarily because of, number one, their organizational structure and the way they're built. In terms of them, again, being a winning franchise. They just find ways to find success. You still have Steve Kerr's system, which, again, I don't care what people say about, Steve Kerr doesn't deserve any credit. If you watch basketball, if you know your basketball, you understand why Steve Kerr deserves all the credit in the world, especially compared to what Mark Jackson was for them, right? A lot of people that talk about the Mark Jackson versus Steve Kerr thing don't remember actually watching the Golden State Warriors pre-Steve Kerr and all the issues that happened within the locker room and on the court, right? People don't remember that. But Steve Kerr deserves all the credit in the world because he is a winner. At every stage in his career, you've seen that, minus Phoenix. His stint in Phoenix did not go well. But every other stage in his career, you saw him win, right? Again, they also added guys like Kelly Oubre. They added him. They drafted James Wiseman, who can possibly be very good for them at the center spot. If not, you have Kevon Looney as your starter anyways. They added Kent Bazemore. They added Brad Wanamaker. Marquise Chris, they re-signed him. He quietly had a very productive season for them last year as well. Not to mention Damian Lee was also another guy who had a quietly very productive season last year. Oh, Eric Pascal, too. You're talking about rookies.
Everyone's forgetting about Eric Pascal.
They have a very solid team, especially if you talk about Draymond Green being healthy again and him playing to the potential that he can, especially with Steph Curry. Andrew Wiggins, hopefully they can get something out of him this year too. They can help him improve. If they're able to play to their potential, I don't see why they can't be a 6th seed in the Western Conference. Not to mention if they were able to surprise us, possibly being a top 4 seed. That's just how winners are. Again, we've talked about this as Raptors fans. Nobody expected the Raptors to have a top 3 record in the league last year. But that's what comes with organizational structure and stability and winning. And Golden State, the Warriors are one of those franchises in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't even think we're the biggest Warrior fans in the world.
Oh, no, we hate the Warriors.
Oh, we definitely do.
But again, hating a team is different than, not having respect for them. You gotta respect everyone.
We respect them. Like, the thing is, and even so, like, y'all know this. I'm not the biggest Steph Curry fan, but I'm not gonna deny the fact that he's one of the best players in this league. Not to mention, like, you have Draymond still, who can have a bounce back year. Like, Draymond basically had a whole year of load management, so that should help him heal off some injuries. Andrew Wiggins in a new system, in a winning environment, should be better. I like the pickup of Kelly Oubre Jr., especially after Klay got injured. This Warriors team has talent, and I think because they have such a good system, they have good players, they should be a playoff team this next season, even despite Clay's tragic injury.
Again, the one big if is if they just get hit with the injury bug again.
Yeah.
Which hopefully, again, knock on wood, does not happen, right? But if that happens again, then you could be looking at a repeat of last year.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But either way, I mean, best case scenario, Golden State's going to be in the playoffs, and we think they're going to be a six seed. Which brings us into our prediction for the 7th seed. Now this is, y'all already know, this is one of my new teams. It's the Dallas Mavericks. We're predicting as the 7th seed. Last season they finished with a 43-32 record, which was the 7th seed last year. Now, a lot of you will be questioning why we're putting the Mavs as the 7th seed, and I'll get into that. But first of all,
unless you hate Luka.
Hate Luka, how can you hate Luka?
Skip Bayless would do.
Skip Bayless can go away. But speaking of Luka, the fact of the matter is that the Mavs are going to be a playoff team next year. Like last season, there was question of can they make it to the playoffs? Will they? This season, I think there's no doubt about it. This team is going to be a playoff team. Luka's going to get even better.
Which is insane, bro.
Which is insane. Especially after that playoff run he went on against the Clippers in the first round. Like, Luka Doncic can get to another level, which is very scary for the league.
Again, you're talking about... Realistically, Luka Doncic, if he goes at the pace that he's going, could have the greatest career of all time.
He could. No, he definitely could. Not bad for a European, right? I'm just saying. But not on top of Luka's, improvement, they also have added solid pieces like Josh Richardson and James Johnson. Now the Josh Richardson piece, people were questioning based on why would you go with Seth Curry? He's a good player. But Josh Richardson's, I think he's a really good player too. Like he's 3 and D, which is something that Seth Curry just wasn't. He was the 3, just not the D.
I mean, Seth Curry was very underrated as a defender in terms of the fact that he could get a lot of steals like his brother. But again, they're smaller guys. Josh Richardson is arguably a better fit because of the fact that he can also shoot threes. But as you're talking about the defense, he is one of the better defenders at his position in the NBA.
Yeah. Not to mention, you're also picking up a guy like James Johnson, and it's really just to protect Luka. So you don't have Marcus Morris, trying to get into Luka's face anymore. Now you got James Johnson to back him up, which I think is great. Actually, you have a young star, you want to protect him, you want to surround him with pieces to help him succeed. Again,
we're talking about last year. I think the one thing that was missing from Dallas was just we saw in the playoffs too with the Clippers, the toughness, right, aspect of
Dallas
the
was a very finesse team.
Yeah, they were not a quote unquote tough team, which is why they wanted to get guys like Josh Richardson and James Johnson who bring that added toughness, that grittiness, that defensive-ness on the team, which is something. If they want to get to that next level, they need. Again, we were talking about last year. They had on paper stat-wise, arguably the best offense of all time. I don't know if they ended the season as that, but they were on pace for the best offense of all time. And then on the flip side of the ball, they were not that great.
Yeah, I mean, again, this Mavs team is basically the same roster as last year. Minus a couple of pieces like Seth Curry and I believe, MKG, but who really cares? But
they re-signed Trey Burke.
They did re-sign Trey Burke. Tim Hardaway Jr. picked up his player option. So again, this team is reloaded. It's gonna be a playoff team. But the reason why we're predicting them as a 7th seed is because Kristaps Porzingis he came off of an MCL surgery, so we don't know when he's going to be back. He is gonna miss the beginning of the season. And Dwight Powell is also coming off of an injury which prevented him from playing in the bubble.
Again, Kristaps Porzingis, even if he does come back, he's going to be on a minutes restriction either way. Especially after what happened last year, right? Yeah. So, in terms of Kristaps Porzingis being there and his availability, you're probably going to see a 50% Kristaps Porzingis utilization.
But that does mean more of the GOAT Boban. So no one can complain about that one. But basically the Mavs aren't going to be 100% at least until the midway
they re-signed
point.
Willie Cauley-Stein.
They did re-sign Willie Cauley-Stein. But basically the Mavs aren't going to be 100% until at least midway through the season, which will hurt them in the seeding, especially in the West where it's heavily competitive in this Western Conference. So yeah, we still do expect the Mavs to be a playoff team. It's just that because of the injuries, they are going to be lower than what we originally expected them to be at.
Again, the Dallas Mavericks did get better, right? They got better as a team. The problem is everyone else in the West is also
got better,
good,
yeah.
right? So that's the problem with Dallas.
Yeah.
The number 8 seed is where
it's confusing.
It was very tough for us in the sense that for our number 8 seed, we have the Houston Rockets, who went 44-28 last year, who were the 4th seed.
We have them penciled in at the number 8 seed.
Exactly, we have them penciled in at the number 8 seed. The reason why this was very tough for us is because of the situation surrounding Russell Westbrook and James Harden. Now, if Russell Westbrook and James Harden stay on the team, we have them as our 8th seed. The problem is they might not stay on their team.
Yeah.
Again, it's also very tough in the sense that Russell Westbrook's contract, James Harden's contract, even though it's huge,
he's worth it.
Exactly, he's worth it. Nobody's gonna, question the contract. But again, that's a big if for Russell Westbrook and James Harden staying on the team until the end of the year, which is why we have them penciled in at the 8 seed. But if one of them leaves, we could see them dropping out of the playoff race. Again, James Harden probably on his own is good enough to get them to the playoffs. But especially if both of them end up being shipped out, then, you're seeing them out of the playoffs for sure.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that they pretty much have almost no depth.
Yeah.
Right? They have no depth. Aside from, outside of James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Eric Gordon, and, Daniel House. But they also did sign Christian Wood. Now, the reason why this signing is big because...
He's a big?
He's a big. But if James Harden and Russell Westbrook are pretty much forced to stay for the whole season, you add a guy like Christian Wood, who had a very productive year last year, that could even propel them higher to an 8 seed, right? Higher than an 8 seed. With a guy like Christian Wood anchoring the middle for you. We talked about James Harden and his lob passes to a guy like Clint Capella, who they had before, Dwight Howard. Christian Wood can do that too.
Same
not
thing
to
with
mention,
Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that Christian Wood is more versatile on offense. He can shoot. He has all 3 levels of scoring in his game. He's a good defender. He can rebound. He's a good all-around player for them. So that was a very underrated signing for them to go out and get a guy like Christian Wood, especially if James Harden and Russell Westbrook stay. But again, that's a big if, and if they don't stay, then we're looking at this team completely dropping out of the playoff race.
Yeah, I mean, Houston's an interesting team, man. There's so many questions regarding this team, which is why we have them at the 8th seed. We just don't know what Houston Rockets team we're going to get by the end of the year. So, I mean, best case scenario, they'll be higher than an 8 seed. I guess this is the most neutral position that we can take on them, is that they'll be an 8 seed, and one of Westbrook or Harden will be gone.
Worst case scenario, they end up dropping to, the last seed.
Yeah. And then Tillman Fertitta will literally be, looking under every single seat for change and shit. It's desperate time for Tillman Fertitta. So, yeah, that was the Houston Rockets. Our penciled in 8 seed.
Well, I mean, he'll be happy that James Harden and Russell Westbrook's contracts are off his books, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Tillman Fertitta's a weird guy. Which brings us into our projected 9 seed. Now, again, this is a penciled in 9 seed. In the event that Houston doesn't make it to the playoffs, we would say this team will be in the playoffs. It's the Phoenix Suns. The Suns last season finished with a record of 34-39, which was the 10th seed. And the Suns had probably the biggest offseason, making the biggest splash in the offseason. They traded for
probably outside of Atlanta.
Yeah, outside of Atlanta. They traded for CP3, added Jay Crowder. They also brought back the same core that went 8-0 in the bubble. And you know what? This team is shifted focus in a direction that, honestly, I didn't think a Robert Sarver-owned team would actually do.
They also got Langston Galloway.
They also got
very underrated pickup.
Yes, they also got
That's
Langston.
our guy, Langston
He's
Galloway.
our guy. Our off-season outlook guy. But, they added some good pieces on top of a young core that is growing. And not to mention when you have a star like Devin Booker that you want to... the fact that you're actually committed to surrounding this guy with veteran pieces to win now is actually a good sign for a young star.
We were talking about Tillman Fertitta being cheap, bro.
Robert
Sarver, bro. Oh,
hey, man. Good luck paying CP3. It's $44 million.
Listen, bro. James Jones is the only thing saving them right now.
Pretty much. And you know what? I said this, I think...
Shout out Champ, bro.
Yeah, man. Honestly speaking, I said this a couple of episodes ago when we talked about the Chris Paul trade. This is a good move for James Jones. This is his first defining move as a general manager, and I think it's a pretty good one. Now, will that get the Suns to the playoffs? That's to be seen. But they will definitely be a competitive team, especially if they can build off the success they had, in the bubble. And it could be enough to sneak them into the playoffs. Like, I'm not gonna say that they're that much better than the Houston, like they're that much worse than the Houston Rockets.
Honestly, they might be even better as a team.
They might be better as a team. Like, you're talking about the improvements from Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. Dario Saric is on the team, DeAndre Ayton. Like, they have a lot of young talent on this team. Adding a veteran, Chris Paul, Jay Crowder, another player like Langston Galloway. It's a pretty good team on paper. But, especially now when you have Monty Williams as the coach, this Phoenix team has a lot of potential to be a playoff team. The question is, in the Western Conference, can they get there?
Listen, you're talking about a team that went, again, as you're talking about, 8-0 in the bubble last year. The confidence builder, especially for a young team, and then adding Chris Paul to that, that's a huge win for them.
And we saw what Chris Paul did with the young team last year in OKC.
Exactly. And then going back to the fact about them possibly making the playoffs this year, they realistically could very well make the playoffs last year.
Oh, yeah.
If DeAndre Ayton didn't get suspended for 25 games. Because before he got suspended, they were on a roll. And then he got suspended and their season was almost over. And then the bubble happened. They went 8-0. So they very well could have made the playoffs even last year. But DeAndre Ayton got suspended. Now you're talking about another season where all their guys get better. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, and all of them get more defined roles. So they're not trying to find their way. Now they know how to play the roles better. And then you add Chris Paul. They could very well even be higher than, for example, an 8th or 7th seed. I would not be surprised about them making a 8 to 5 seed in the Western Conference.
Yeah. I mean, the question is, will they?
Exactly. Moving on to the 10th seed, we have the New Orleans Pelicans penciled in as the 10th seed.
Yes, ESPN, they are a 10th seed, not whatever the hell you think they're going to be. Like
listen, bro, according
seed.
to ESPN, bro, Zion's going to save them and they're going to become like the 3rd seed, right? Again, they were 30-42 last year. Good for the 13th spot in the Western Conference. Again, a big...
Despite Zion not playing like half the year.
Exactly, but that's a big reason why we should probably temper the expectations on New Orleans a bit.
Absolutely.
But in terms of why people have so much excitement about them, the excitement is justified, bro. The excitement, the team they have on paper, the talent that they have on paper. Zion Williamson, in the minutes he played, looked like an all-time great.
He's box office.
Yeah, he looked like an all-time great in the making, right? Averaging 22 points in the amount of games that he did. Insane. You add that with guys like Brandon Ingram, who just got paid, and you're talking about a guy who's going to get even better next year. Hopefully guys like Lonzo Ball and them can get better next year. They have a very talented team. They added a guy like Steven Adams to help solidify their center spot. And then also, the big one for them is that they hired Stan Van Gundy, who represents a huge upgrade over Alvin Gentry. Listen, I like Alvin Gentry, but especially his management of Zion Williamson did not help his case to get rehired, right?
No.
And definitely by the end, he was gone, bro.
Granted, I did feel that it was a little premature to fire Alvin Gentry because I just don't think he had a full season with the squad. But also, David Griffin was a little justified, especially with his handlement of Zion and all that. And it's, again, you need a win-now coach to come in there and...
Also, here's the thing, too, right? Alvin Gentry was there for a couple of years already. And he really had nothing to show for it, if we're being honest.
I mean, he had
the one great thing that he did was that one series where they upset the Portland Trailblazers. Right? And then after that, they got booted out the playoffs. And completely booted out the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, in terms of New Orleans Pelicans, they have a very, very talented team. It's just, number one, they're too young. Number two, the rest of the Western Conference is just too insane, bro. So, that's why we have them as our 10th seed. Now, the one caveat in this is just if David Griffin just tanks the team, where he just trades one of the players that they have or whatever, and he's like, or he just looks at this team right now and he's like, I don't think we're going to make the playoffs, and even if we do, I don't want to make the playoffs as an 8 seed. I'd rather just tank and get, some assets for that for a player of mine. So that could very well happen. He kind of did that last year as well. So that could be the one caveat in them just dropping down. But, we'll see with them.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, but again, realistically, we expect the Pelicans to be a 10th seed this next upcoming season. Which brings us into another team. This was my last year's, I believe this was my Cinderella pick for last year. It was the Memphis Grizzlies.
This was not our pick for last year, bro. We had them as a 15 seed last year.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we took a fat L.
But you know what?
Hey, everyone else took a fat L.
Everyone took a hell on this team.
Yeah.
But I did really like this team for a few reasons. Last season, they were 34 and 39. They finished with the 9th seed. They could have honestly made it to the playoffs if it wasn't for the play-in tournament.
Yeah, they choked.
For them playing shit in the bubble.
They choked. Again, young team.
That's what happened. Again, it's a very young team. This is the same young core that you're bringing back with John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark. JV, like it's a young team.
They re-signed DeAnthony Melton as well.
Yep.
Good re-sign for them.
And they got a few draft assets. I mean, they acquired Mario Hezonja. I don't know if that matters, but
I mean, listen, for me personally, I watched him in the bubble last year for Portland. I thought he did get, a bit. He actually did get a bit better. He impressed me on some plays, which is saying a lot for Mario Hezonja.
I don't know if he can find Luigi, then let me know. I had to do it, but yeah, I mean,
different countries, bro.
Same thing. But either way, this is still a very young team that's gonna get better. But at the end of the day, the rest of the Western Conference just got a lot better. And do I think this Grizzlies team is gonna be fun? Absolutely. But do I think they're gonna be competitive enough to be a playoff team? No, I don't.
Not in the West, bro. They're gonna be a competitive team. I think they're a very good team.
For sure.
But again, the Western Conference is so I'll keep repeating this because it's hard to get your head wrapped around it, but the Western Conference is so insanely stacked.
Yeah.
Like 1 through 14, maybe even 15th seed. You'll see our 15th seed, but even the 15th best team or worst team in the Western Conference for us is still a pretty solid team if we're being honest, But that moves us into the 12th seed where we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, we've talked about the Minnesota Timberwolves before as well. This is one of the most talented teams in the league on paper.
To be trash.
Yeah, to be pretty much, yeah. One of the worst, most talented teams, right? The Minnesota Timberwolves are going to be a very fun team to watch. Definitely, bro. If there's one thing that's going well for them, it's that they brought back excitement to Minneapolis. They're going to be a very exciting team. They're going to be a very fun team.
Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they finally got roster construction right. Like they finally understood that, maybe Cat and Wiggins don't work. Maybe we should surround Cat with with another guard, and then maybe we should actually pair a guard with a wing. With Anthony Edwards.
They finally got some good players.
Exactly.
Is what they got. Listen. They got Ricky Rubio, which was a very good pickup for them. Now D'Angelo Russell doesn't have to play that point guard role, which he is more of a shooting guard than a point guard. Now you have a traditional point guard on your team to help facilitate the offense. You also...
Sorry, man, I didn't want to cut you off here. We got breaking news. Russell Westbrook has just been traded for John Wall. So
is our pick for the Houston Rockets still valid?
I think now we gotta flip it. I think now they're 9th seed. I think Phoenix.
Okay, so we flip it. Okay, so we're officially flipping our pick, right? We're flipping Houston to 9th seed. Are we flipping them to 9th seed? Or are we dropping them a bit lower?
No, I think because they still have James Harden. I think
they still have James Harden, and John Wall and Russell Westbrook are very similar.
John Wall and James Harden.
Yeah, listen, bro. John Wall and Russell Westbrook are very similar. So in the style of play aspect, I don't think it'll change too much.
So the official trade, the Woj bomb, is Russell Westbrook traded to Washington in exchange for John Wall in a first round pick. So Houston actually got a pick, which
sick. Houston got a pick. Listen, so I guess that officially changes our pick. Then we have the Phoenix Suns now making it to the playoffs, which again, the Phoenix Suns are a very capable team. But going back to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They also drafted Anthony Edwards. They re-signed Malik Beasley, which, listen, Malik Beasley off the court is what it is. We're not going to talk about it, right?
On the court,
he's a very good player. They still have a guy like Jake Layman. Shout out Jake Layman. I don't know why, I'm shouting him out, but listen, he's a very good player. It's just he was completely injured for the past, couple of years or whatever it is. But he's a very solid player. We saw that in Portland as well. They also have a guy like Josh Okogie, Jordan McLaughlin, who I'm a fan of. They have a couple of very good players. Naz Reid as well. They re-signed Juancho Hernan-Gomez. But they have a very, very nice team. It's just, again, number one, they're too young. Number two, they probably won't play a ton of defense, right?
And number three, it's the Western Conference, and it's very stacked.
one thing that might happen for them is they're probably gonna have to trade somebody. Like their depth chart is a bit too congested, I think.
Yeah. Minnesota's going to be interesting to watch. They're going to be better than last year, but how much better is the question. Moving on into the 13th seed. Now this one hurts a little bit just because of the fact that they were the gold standard for 20 plus years, man. The San Antonio Spurs, we're projecting them to be the 13th seed. It just doesn't sound right, man.
It sounds weird for sure.
It sounds super weird. So this last year, the Spurs finished with a 32-39 record, which was good enough for the 11th seed. Honestly, this sucks for if you're a fan of the Spurs like me. But this is a transitional year. The Spurs need to wait for either to trade DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, or just let them walk in next year's free agency to allow their young players and Lonnie Walker, DeJounte Murray, who I think Derek White they still have on the team.
Bryn Forbes left.
And Bryn Forbes left. But to let these young guys develop and Jakob Poeltl and all them.
Shout out Lonnie Walker, bro. He's going to be, for me, I think he's going to be sick.
Lonnie Walker's going to be a very good player. But in order for these guys to truly grow and truly hit their potential, you got to get rid of these aging veterans. Yeah. And I don't know how long Popovich is going to stay on for.
I think once they fully commit to rebuild, I think Pop is done. Which,
it's understandable.
He should, low-key, I don't want him, tarnishing his which it wouldn't tarnish his legacy, but it just dampen it a bit, right? Yeah. So I don't want him to even. There's no point of putting Pop through, putting him through a rebuild. There's no point of that, right?
Yeah.
So once they need to get DeMar and LaMarcus Aldridge out the door, and once that happens, they should commit to a full rebuild.
And R.C. Buford's a very good executive, so hopefully the Spurs will be back within a few seasons, but this season it's not going to be a good one for Spurs fans.
Yeah, definitely. At our 14th seed, we have the Sacramento Kings. Last year they were 31-41 for the 12th seed. Now it's the Kings, bro.
Can anyone tell me what they're doing?
Nobody knows. Literally nobody knows, bro.
So you lost Bogdanovich for absolutely nothing. You didn't even try to match the offer that he got with the Hawks. You re-signed De'Aaron Fox to what honestly is an overpay.
I don't know if it's an overpay, but it's the thing about De'Aaron Fox is literally he's the only thing that's gone right for the franchise, low-key. So
Buddy Hield,
Buddy Hield is also one of the only things that's gone right for the franchise. But Buddy Hield, we don't know his situation. He might just ask for a trade, and I don't know. And Buddy Hield is what it is. But listen, nobody knows what the Sacramento Kings are doing. They don't know themselves what they're doing. It's a very not great team. They have a couple of nice pieces. Rashawn Holmes.
Are they the Knicks of the East? Are the Knicks of the West? They have Vivek Ranadive.
Listen, the West has a couple of Knicks caliber teams.
You're right.
Minnesota,
Robert Sarver, but he actually did something right for once.
Minnesota, Minnesota and Sacramento are the primary ones that come to mind, right? When we're talking about the Knicks of the West, but yeah, Sacramento Kings. Second last seed in the Western Conference, no surprise there. They're probably not gonna win many games. Again, they might be competitive because Sacramento as a team for the past couple of years has also been a competitive team, but they're probably not gonna win many games. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And then rounding it off to the 15th seed, the last spot in the Western Conference, we have the OKC Thunder. Now, last year they were, of course, the 5th seed in the West. They had a 44.
Story.
Yeah, the Cinderella story. They had a 44-28 record. But obviously, they've just gone into full tank mode, right? Sam Presti is just getting all these picks. He has apparently around 32 picks until 2027. He's just
insane.
He's just accumulating picks.
You're talking about Danny Ainge's war chest. Sam Presti just took that war chest. You know what? I don't need a chest.
He juiced it.
I don't need a chest. I need an entire warehouse.
Yeah, he juiced it, bro. He went crazy with the picks, and yeah. So they're pretty much they don't care about the season. But again, as we were talking about, this still is a decent team. If we're being it's not a decent team, but they still have a couple of pieces.
They have nice young talent. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort. Obviously the players that they're gonna draft in the future, they're gonna be there as well.
Not to mention you had a guy like Al Horford, who granted his contract is terrible, but we saw him in a bad situation for him in Philly too, right? So you get him into a situation that's more normal for him, and not to mention his veteran experience really helps the young team. He's still a good player, despite what happened in Philly. I think he's still a very good player. It's just Philly was definitely not an ideal situation.
No,
But
not at all.
you still have a guy like George Hill. They signed Darius Miller. Or did they trade for him? Either way, we have no idea who's actually going to stay on this roster, minus probably like Lou Dort and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Maybe Darius Baisley. But this is either way a rebuild year for them, and it's just all
It's
about
a tank year.
It's all about the assets,
pretty much. So yeah, those were our predictions or season predictions for the Western Conference for this upcoming season. Let us know what you guys think. Do you agree or disagree? Definitely let us know, or give us your order. What do you guys predict the Western Conference standings are going to be for this upcoming season? Which brings us into the up and under segment for this week. Now this obviously I'm going to throw in the recent Woj bomb as our first one. So are you up or under on the Russell Westbrook John Wall trade? The one that just happened literally 5 minutes ago, we found out. Because thanks, Woj.
Yeah, thanks for doing it in the middle of our episode.
Could you not have done it like at least like 15 minutes earlier so we could have just gotten it like before we talked about Houston?
I'm surprised he doesn't see the future. He should have done that, bro. Like, honestly, man, that's Woj. He should have seen the future.
Probably.
It would have been a normal thing for him, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about this, honestly, because it's one of those trades where I think happened just for the sake of having a trade done. Neither team got better. Neither team really got worse. Well, nothing really happened. Houston got a pick out of it. Cool. Right? It's probably not a great pick. I don't think so. This didn't really help anybody or hurt anybody. This seemed more of like a trade just for the sake of having a trade. Because as we talked about this in, I think, two episodes ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
This was pretty much the only move that could be done for Russell Westbrook, unless you threw in a Charlotte deal, a Charlotte or whatever. But obviously that's not happening now with Gordon Hayward signing to Charlotte. Yeah. The only realistic move to happen, we talked about this 2 episodes ago, was a John Wall for Russell Westbrook trade. That trade does not really move the needle for anybody. It's literally, again, a trade just for the sake of a trade, pretty much.
John Wall's 2 years younger, but they both still have 3 years left at around $41 million.
They're both pretty much the same kind of player.
But I will say this, John Wall, next to James Harden, I want to see it.
James Harden, they keep James Harden too.
I want to see it. The last few episodes you've heard me say, I'm excited for John Wall. And I think a change of scenery will actually do him some good. Now, how good is Houston going to be? That's to be seen at this point. But the fact of the matter is, I don't hate the move. I just think for both Westbrook and John Wall, I think a change of scenery was definitely needed. Now, Russell Westbrook in the Eastern Conference is also interesting as well.
It's going to be interesting. Definitely, for sure.
Now, does that mean the Wizards are still going to keep Bradley Beal? Probably.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've said on numerous occasions they're not trading Bradley Beal,
which I think is foolish.
Yeah. Next up, we have, are you up or under on LeBron James and the Lakers agreeing to a 2-year, $85 million extension? So this reportedly keeps him until 2023.
Yeah. Which happens to be Bronny's graduation year from high school.
Yes, exactly.
So Bronny Jr., which means, technically speaking, he can declare for the draft that season. So that means LeBron is probably going to stick around until his son's in the NBA.
And then just join whatever team comes.
Pretty much.
Gets Bronny. But interestingly, another thing that affects this deal is that now reportedly Anthony Davis is probably going to sign a 3+1, 2+1.
I think it's a 2+1.
2
plus 1.
2+1. So that his free agency coincides with LeBron James' free agency. So that way, if, for example, LeBron James is at the end of his career or whatever, or wants to go to the team that Bronny goes to, now Anthony Davis has the freedom to do what he wants.
Yeah. I mean, I'm up on it. I'm not Skip Bayless. I'm not going to hate on the fact that LeBron's getting $85 million for 2 years because he's the best player in the world. And I saw Skip Bayless' tweet on this, and I was immediately like, dude, do you see how much Steph Curry's making? Do you see how much James Harden's making? Do we question how much money these guys make? No, because they are one of the best players in the league, in the world, and they deserve to be paid. LeBron is the best, at the top of the mountain as far as players of basketball.
Let me just say this. Did you question Jordan's contract? No. Why? Because he is the face of the league. Without Michael Jordan, the league would have not been anywhere close to where it was and where it's come to. Without LeBron James, and you can check the ratings for yourself, what happened when he went to the West Coast and he had to play on West Coast timings, how the ratings dropped. right?
Yeah, LeBron is the face of the league. He's the best player in the world. Deserves to get paid. And I think the fact that he's very strategic on LeBron's
Shout out Rich
part.
Paul.
Rich Paul, man.
Clutch Sports.
Clutch Sports. Moving on, are you up or under on the Lakers' newly acquired Dennis Schroeder stating that he intends to be the starter for this upcoming season?
I mean, I'm up on it. I understand why he wants to. Obviously, it's also a free agency year for him, so he has to, get that bag in the offseason. I don't think it'll actually matter that much. Obviously, I'd prefer him to come off the bench because I think that would be a better role for him. But I don't think it's going to matter that much because of the fact that the way Frank Vogel is going to play the minutes, he's probably going to be running a lot with the bench unit anyway. So either way, starter, bench role, it's low-key just names. I don't think it'll matter that much because either way, he'll probably play the same type of minutes, the same type of role. Yeah. But I understand why he wants to do it. Again, free agency year. So, and he talked about he came off the bench for Thunder the last 2 years. So, again, I understand why he wants to do it. I don't think it'll matter that much. Either way, they're all gunning for a championship anyways.
Yeah.
Next up, are you up or under on a couple of retirements? So, Joakim Noah is one who is, after he got waived by the Clippers, he's reportedly likely to retire. And then number 2, Andrew Bogut did state that he is retiring. So, are you up or under on them retiring and also how their careers were?
So, obviously, I'm under on the fact that they're retiring because I think both these players are good players. I respect Joakim Noah a lot just from the hustle standpoint and what he did in Chicago those years. Injuries really killed his career.
Well, we can say that for Andrew Bogut.
And for Andrew Bogut. Andrew Bogut, again, solid big man when he first came into the league.
Well, he was a very good big man, and then he completely snapped his arm in half.
Yeah, and then
that did not help.
Goes to the Warriors, reshaped his career, wins a championship. At the end of the day, I'm up on the fact that it's the right move. Both these guys are at an age and at a point now where their games and their injury history doesn't align with the modern day NBA.
Again, Andrew Bogut was talking about how he wanted to come back, but then he said that pretty much he would wake up some days and he would barely be able to walk down the stairs, and he was like, yeah, there's no way I can play a full season if I can't even walk down the stairs properly. Yeah. Right? So 2 of the guys that's just injuries pretty much killed them, but very good in their primes, especially Joakim Noah.
I'm going to miss Joakim Noah, man. I love his hustle.
I'm a LeBron fan, so, we all hated Joakim Noah, but you got to respect who Joakim Noah was as a player and what he did, right?
I mean, this man was a defensive monster.
Not to mention the legacy these guys left. Obviously, Joakim Noah, his legacy on the city of Chicago and the Chicago Bulls. Yeah. And then Andrew Bogut, especially, his legacy on Australian basketball. You talk about all these Australian guys looking up to Andrew Bogut as their veteran, as one of those premier Australian players for the country. So, both of these guys have left big legacies respectively. So, shout out both of them.
Wish them the best.
Hopefully they enjoy retirement. Next
we know Dirk is.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, are you up or under on the Los Angeles Clippers and some of their recent transactions? So reportedly, they're re-signing Reggie Jackson to a 1-year deal, and they're also adding Nick Batum after he was waived by Charlotte.
I'm up on both of them.
Waived by Boston.
No, he was waived by Charlotte.
No. He was waived by Charlotte to make room for the Gordon Hayward signing.
Yeah. I'm up on it. I'm up on both signings. I think re-signing Reggie Jackson just makes sense because you really don't have much other point guard depth besides Reggie Jackson and Pat Bev. So might as well bring back Reggie Jackson on a cheap deal. Nick Batum I actually really like more. Nick Batum, he's been basically chilling in Charlotte for the last few years.
He's played, I think, combined 25 games in the past 2 years.
Dude, this guy has not been trying. He's been collecting his paychecks. That's all he's been doing.
Shout out
I think on
Nick
a winning
Batum, bro.
Yeah, shout out Nick Batum. I mean, I think on a winning team, you're gonna see a different Nick Batum, more engaged Nick Batum. I think definitely he'll be better. He'll be good depth for the Clippers.
Listen, he's probably not gonna play that much, but in the minutes that he does play, he'll probably be a lot more committed. He'll probably be a lot better.
And again, he's no stranger to deep playoff runs with his time with the Blazers.
Again, experience. Yeah,
he's a very experienced veteran. So adding him to a championship team actually is a good move.
France basketball,
and his overseas experience as well. So I definitely like both signings. Moving on, are you up or under on the Miami Heat interested in Bradley Beal, especially if Giannis signs the Supermax with the Bucks? This is also interesting now that the Wizards have traded John Wall.
I'm under on it.
Oof.
As a Raptors fan.
Okay, there you go.
Real talk, bro. Listen, man, I like the parity in the NBA.
I do. I like it too.
if Bradley Beal goes to Miami Heat, okay, I guess it's still kind of parity still remains because it's Bradley Beal and Jimmy Butler. Well, I mean, Bam Adebayo. Okay, maybe not. Either way, as a Raptors fan, I don't want to see this because I don't want anybody in the East to get better.
I want to see Bradley Beal to the Raptors.
Facts.
Nobody has talked about this, but if we don't get Giannis, we have the money to get Bradley Beal.
Facts.
We have the team to build it around it. Bradley Beal, come to Toronto. Just saying. We won't shit on you like the Wizards. It's ridiculous. But yeah, definitely. To Miami, it's interesting. Miami can definitely do it. It's just about we don't really want it to happen. From a fan's point of view.
But again, if we're talking about unbiasedly, then Miami would be a definitely good fit for him.
Definitely. Right. And finally, are you up or under on Steph Curry launching his own Curry brand with Under Armour, similar to Jordan brand under Nike?
Listen, you can make fun of the Currys all you want, but at the end of the day, Steph Curry single-handedly brought that Under Armour franchise to the next level. He deserves everything that Under Armour gives him. He is pretty much what Michael Jordan was to Nike. Like, obviously not in the sense that they're both the same. They have the same impact, but Steph Curry means the most in the world to Under Armour. So, shout out Steph Curry. Definitely deserves it, bro.
Yeah. And with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various podcasting platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. Basically, wherever you can find a podcast, you can find us with the Up and Under Podcast. For YouTube listeners, the links are all in the description down below. So definitely check that out, or in the show notes for the audio listeners. Also, follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at UpLetterN_Podcast, Facebook.com/UpAndUnderPodcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or a reaction to news as they occur, like this Woj bomb right here. So definitely follow us there for all the latest updates. Also, check out our website, UpAndUnderPodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. It's also where we post blog posts about every single episode. So if you don't have time to watch the list, watch or listen to the full episode, you can read about it on our website. So definitely check it out if you haven't done so. And yeah, stay tuned for next episode. We will be breaking down our preview for the Eastern Conference. Definitely going to be an interesting one, so stay tuned for that one. Don't want to miss it. But yeah, man, the regular season is...
It's almost upon us.
It's almost upon us, man.
Right after the last regular season.
Ball is coming back. And yes, COVID has made things very weird. But with that concludes this week's episode. We'll see you guys all in the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.